I want to welcome back to the show, Rachael Gilbert. Rachael, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Melissa.
It's so fun having returning guests, and it's even more fun having fellow counselors. I just feel like a kindred spirit talking to another counselor. So, we are here talking about your new book, Image Restored: Tear Down Shame and Insecurity to Experience a Body Image Renovation. What are the signs that maybe we need a renovation, that something is not healthy within our body image?
Well, Melissa, I'm like you. I love talking to counselors because I feel like you speak my language. And so, as far as how we think that we may be in need of a body image renovation, first of all, the very most simple thing is, I mean, does this feel like an area that you're stuck in, that maybe you've kept to yourself, you've struggled silently, that it holds you back from things. It takes a lot of time and energy, and you've thought about it a lot, and you notice your thoughts are there a lot around your body when you first wake up in the morning, when you go to bed at night. And then also of just that term body image. I know I've already seen this in writing this book, that women literally will see the phrase body image in men as well and go, oof, I need that. We just know, right? When we're like, yeah, what I'm doing isn't working. We need to do things differently.
Yeah. And why do you think it's such a place still of shame where it's maybe hard to get help? Because as a counselor, I'm sure you hear this as well. People just kind of like, it's like an afterthought. Oh yeah, I'm also dealing with hating my body, as if it's like not a big deal. You know what I mean? Like it's like, but it takes up so much of their mental energy and mental headspace. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on maybe what's keeping us kind of stuck in this not exploring it place?
I think a couple of things. One big one, especially in culture, and I do see this shifting some, but is I have witnessed within myself in counseling and friends, family, just observing that it's one of those things everybody thinks, well, this is just a normal part of life. Kind of like I need to get up and I need to brush my teeth and get something, get dressed for the day. We have struggled so much in this area for so long that it's almost foreign to think about not struggling with it. It's like, what would I even be if I wasn't thinking about these things all the time? This is just what everybody does. Kind of like I go to college and I get a job and I get a career and I have a family. It's just part of life. So I think that's one thing. And then the second thing I think it is that the conversations we do have around this topic tend to be more shame filled
Yeah.
and more ideas on how we could lose weight, or how, we're talking, the conversations that are being had at the table are, oh, I'm trying this new diet, or, oh, I started this new workout program. There's very few conversations being had about, I'm spending countless amount of time thinking and hating on my body, like you were just saying. And if we do say that, people don't give us space to just process it, hold it, be with it. They want to push us through. They want to give us the answer. They want to go, oh, well, good news. I just started this new diet. You can
Right.
start it with me. That's their answer, right? If
Mhm.
I come and say, Melissa, I'm struggling, that might, we tend to do that to each other. We fix each other instead of just being a place that we can have these hard conversations and say, this way we're doing it is not working. Can we
Right.
please hit the pause button and figure out what's working, what's not, and then be a safe space for each other to have good conversations.
That's so good. You liken the process like renovating a house. How are those processes similar?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, Melissa, but I know I've observed again, I can say both personally and professionally, that it is very similar to kind of how grief doesn't necessarily have a timeline. And
Yeah.
people wish it did. They're like, can you tell me A, B, and C? And then it's done. And we notice, yeah, people kind of jump around and they'll be over here and then they'll come back, and it's not linear. And I've noticed that with body image healing, especially. And I think this can frustrate people sometimes because they think, woohoo, I'm doing so much better. And then they realize, oh, there's another layer. And
Yeah.
so when we think about renovation, there's always another layer. Kind of like when you're like, you know what? I would like to open this place up and make it one big giant room. And we're all excited about that idea. And then we realize, oh no, it's a load bearing wall. We can't do that. Or, oh no, we knocked it down and we found mold and something infested in there that we weren't planning on. And that's so often what happens in any healing of any area of our life. We go to try to address the very top, thing that we're seeing, the behavior, if you will. And then
Yeah.
when the roots start coming up, people go, oh no, actually, let's just cover that back up and pretend we didn't see it. And we're just going to stop the process. And so it's a journey, it's a process. And I encourage readers and listeners on that. And just people that I get to meet is like, hey, it's totally normal that it's a journey. It's going to come in layers, and that's expected. And it's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. There is no actual timeline. I think that's the journey and the process, especially with our body image. I think especially as women, not that men don't struggle with body image issues, but I feel like as a woman, our bodies like change, basically like 28 times a month. You know what I mean? Like depending on where we are in our cycle, where we are in our age. Like I know in my 40s, like my body is totally different than when I was in my 30s and 20s. And that's strange to like see myself age and to see things change. My hair is changing, my nails are changing, skin is changing. And so just because you have it figured out and worked out in one decade doesn't mean that you don't have to do that work in another decade. And so talk to us about that process of how it is a process and how there really is no end date to it. The renovation continues.
I love this conversation so much because seasons, we all understand seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we all have favorite seasons. I think, what's your favorite in real life season, Melissa?
Summer.
I'm a summer
I
girl
love
too.
summer, man. The kids
Yeah.
aren't on a schedule.
Yeah.
You're maybe going on vacation. It's warm. I know everyone
Yeah.
in Texas is going to say fall, and I love fall too, but
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm a summer girl. My husband's a fall guy. One of my daughters is a winter girl. We all love different seasons, and whatever your season is, you're like, woohoo, it's my season. And then when it's not your season, you're like, oh,
Wah,
I gotta get
wah,
through this season.
wah.
And our bodies are seasons, just like you said, especially as women, constantly changing. And so that's where a huge part of our frustration comes from is, again, thanks, a big part of this due to culture and different things. We have bought this lie. I'm bold enough to call it a lie that when I am 50, I should look and function and act like I was when I was 20. That's insane. There's not even a medical professional around there that would say, oh yeah, the inside of you looks just the same when you're 50 versus when you were 20. Yet on the outward appearance, we are just fighting it. It's literally a fight that we're doing.
Yeah.
Fighting the aging process, fighting these new seasons instead of embracing each season and going, okay, this is a new season. It brings new things. Some things I love, right? And then some things I'm like, oh, do we have to go through this season?
Right.
And just enjoying the journey. And I recognize it's not easy, especially when it's been ingrained in us very opposite. But I don't know about you, but the more I do enjoy the journey and the changing seasons, it's just life is more enjoyable all around, obviously also in my body as well.
That's so countercultural. I'm having like this flood of like different like thought processes happening. Like one is, that Mean Girls clip where they're standing in front of the mirror and they're like all hating on themselves. It's so culturally appropriate and accepted to hate yourself.
Yep.
And then I'm also thinking about all the different beauty ads that basically tell us that, we should have this kind of skin, this kind of body, and do this, do that. And really what you're saying is like, no, like, let's appreciate the body that you're in and accept the season that you're in. But that's like so challenging to do.
It is. And I love that you even referenced it to the Mean Girls, because I know I can think of experiences where if you actually embrace your body, it's been noticed to be like, oh, you're prideful.
Right.
Or, oh, what's wrong with you? Man, you just think you're hot stuff. And it's like, no, not so much I think I'm hot stuff. It's just I refuse to. I think mine also comes from a bit of I love whenever I get a righteous anger towards the correct enemy, because, we've been talking about culture a lot. Well, the enemy is the enemy, right? We have an enemy of our soul. He's the one spreading the accusations and the shame and all, like, we know all that.
The lies.
Yes. He's the father of lies. All right. So let's put the blame where it belongs. I love to do that sometimes. I'm like, you know what? Yes, culture, family, all the things contribute, but the root of all of them is the enemy of our soul. And I think that, whenever we start to blow the whistle, if you will, on what he's doing. Like, hey, this isn't okay. Um, he'll come in just from different angles and try to get us to almost take a step back. And so what I was going to say though is I love when I get a righteous anger towards him, because I know I don't want to spend the rest of my days being so worried about my body, about the aging. Am I going to sit here and tell you I don't worried about it all? No, absolutely not. Do the thoughts still come? Absolutely. Do I still have to, I'm walking through a season now of the wrinkles are coming in and the gray hairs are coming in, and like that's a new season. I'm like, okay, we're walking through that now. But that righteous anger keeps me from saying, like, when I find myself stuck, I'm like, you know what? I am not going to let him steal these years from me, steal this time with my husband and my kids, or you and I getting here to sit and talk, and all the things that I know I want to do before I do exit this earth. I don't want my time spent sitting around worrying.
Yeah. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with like why this problem really matters. We don't have to live our whole life hating ourselves. That is very incongruent with living a biblical life. You know what I mean? Like God is love, and perfect love casts out all fear. And so if you're hating your body, it's going to be so challenging, I think, / impossible to really live out the life that he's called you to live. And so you wrote about this in your book. And I read the statement, I was like, yes, that is so accurate and spot on. As Christians, we know that we're made in God's image. We have all this head knowledge, but there's a huge disconnect between how our heart feels, or what we feel about ourselves, believe about ourselves. So talk to us about that disconnect and how that keeps us trapped believing lies about our bodies.
Yeah, this is an important topic, because this is something that I did find in doing some research, is that these women that I polled, 99.9% of them said, yes, I'm made in God's image. And I strategically placed the questions not next to each other so they wouldn't recognize like the disconnect, if you will, when they're taking it. But then that same 99% of women said, no, I don't like my body. Right. So it's interesting that they all said, yes, I'm made in God's image. But then they also said, no, I don't like my body. And the ones who did say, I do like my body, I heard statements on there that would say something like, I know it in my head, but I want to feel it in my heart.
Yeah.
And I think,
yes,
like we know that. And I think this stands for a lot of topics, but we're specifically talking about body image right now. And I think it's, I know for myself, I can speak for this to myself, it's a bit of a control thing, because if we release this area to God, what does that look like? Right? Like if I release my body image to God and I say, okay, God, I know that I believe I'm made in your image. Like, yes, I do. I believe it. Yet I still have body dissatisfaction. Where's that disconnect coming? And if I truly submit it to him, I think there's a little bit of fear of it when we give up control. What does God's version look like for me? Right? Does that mean I'm going to gain 200 pounds? Does that mean I'm going to, do you know what I mean? Like, we don't know if I let go of that control. Now I can't keep controlling this thing. But here's what I know is that me controlling this thing isn't working.
Right.
So at some point we have to come to the end of ourselves and go, okay, Lord, I do believe I'm made in your image, yet there's this disconnect that has not made it to my heart yet. A lot of times when there's a disconnect, it's because we're not letting God into that area, which the only way to let him in is to release control.
That's really convicting and humbling. You're so right. And it's a scary one to let go of, even though we may not like how we look. We at least have the illusion that we can control it and make it what we want it to be. And so the thought of just like submitting that to God feels very scary.
Yeah.
What are some ways that we can practice that submission, that release, to help us to have a more godly view of who we are? And so we're not living with all those lies.
I think it comes back to simple practices of attaching to him. And I don't want to sound Christianese, but we have to, because, I'm sorry, I kind of hate that that's a phrase now, but stuff like getting in his word and
Mm,
spending time praying. I mean, one thing I love about God's word is that it reads us while we're reading it. And just
mm,
like you made a comment a second ago, ooh, that's convicting, right? That's
mhm,
the Holy Spirit convicting us and
mhm,
saying, there's something off in your heart and showing us. So that whole, I know it in my head, but I want to know it in my heart. The
mhm,
Holy Spirit is the one who can show us things in our heart that we do not know are there, but we have to give space for him to do that. Right now, you and I, we're talking, we're giving him space. Hopefully the listeners, they tuned in and they're giving him space. All right. Those are just two examples, but what about in my own quiet time? And
mhm,
by the way, busy moms and busy women and busy people, quiet time doesn't have to look like sitting in your closet. I mean, that's great
mhm,
if you have that, but oftentimes quiet time for me looks like on my drive to work, instead of listening to something or talking to somebody on the phone, I'll, you know, put worship music on or just talk and pray the Lord and have those conversations. And so it's just creating that space to let him speak into our lives, whether that's through prayer, Bible time, worship. And when he does that, then he's able to highlight those things and he's able to talk to us about those things. And especially when you bring him into your fitness routine. Because by the way, I always like to be very clear when I'm speaking on body image. I am not over here saying, let's all stop working out and forget your fruits and
yeah, you're a
vegetables.
fitness instructor.
Yeah, like I don't teach anymore, but that's what my background is in. And I still love to work out myself. And I still love to, eat healthy, nourishing foods. But it's very different when you do it by saying, hey, Lord, I submit this to you. Will you come with me on this workout today? Will you
Mhm,
speak to me as I'm working out? I mean, I get more of
mm,
my revelations and downloads when I walk or run and things like that. And it just shifts the whole thing from, oh, I have to go do this because if I don't, then I'm going to get overweight, to, oh, I get to go do this because I'm still alive. I have breath in my body. The Lord still has a plan for me while I'm here on this earth, and I'm going to move my body as long as I can.
mhm. Yeah, I'm reading through First Corinthians right now in the Message translation, and First Corinthians 7 is all about how our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Another scripture every one of us Christians know, but the way Paul puts it is like, if your body is truly God's body, how are you spending that body? And the
Yep.
way he put that was like, so because reading it in the Message translation, it just gives me like a different perspective than how I'm used to reading it. And that was so convicting for me because it's like he's saying honor your body through these things, but it's not about letting the thing become the master. It's understanding who you are and whose you are. I love in your book how you talk about our attachment style and how we attach to God is really indicative of our body image. And I've never seen those two things put together. Talk to us about how our body image is connected to how we attach to God, because I don't think most of us would make that connection.
Yeah, I was really excited to find a study that supported
Yeah.
that secure attachment, which in the book, I didn't go deep into attachment styles or necessarily, but what I did focus on was deepening our secure attachment to God. Because the study found that, and this was not a Christian funded study or anything, but the study found that individuals who were more securely attached to God had a better body image and a better view of themselves, which I love to find that. And so I did throughout the book, we did things like I have strong foundation verses at the end of each chapter. We have some coloring to, kind of sit and process and again, talk to the Lord, talk to the Holy Spirit, meditate on the verse. And those things are deepening our secure attachment to Him. And again, I love that when we deepen that secure attachment to Him, then the health and the healing is an overflow of that secure attachment to Him.
Yeah, it just goes together. And again, who we are matters. If we're made in God's image, which we believe that we are, then the body that He has given us is a good body.
Yeah.
And so you talk a lot about beliefs, which as a counselor, that's a lot of the work that I do is exploring how we believe, because what we believe goes on to produce thoughts, feelings, and actions, all in an attempt to meet a need. And so everything we're doing, there's a reason for it. So talk to us about how we can identify maybe some core beliefs that are keeping us in shame and keeping us from really experiencing freedom in regards to our body image.
Yes. I love going after core beliefs. I know you do too, because I think so many of us are walking around with them being directed by them and not fully realizing it. And it's not something we're necessarily born with. It's just some things that we adapt over time. And so a great way to recognize if you're have a core belief in this area, particularly of your body or body image, that is not helpful, would be next time that you have one of those thoughts that feels irrational and debilitating around your body, take a pause,
And
write down
I just want to insert really quick. A thought like that might be, I'm fat, I'm ugly.
yeah.
And you may feel fat and ugly, or you may feel X, Y, and Z, but is that feeling or thought leading you to truth? Because I know a lot of people are like, well, I am fat and ugly, so it's not really a lie. That's the truth. Can you speak into that? Because sometimes we don't know our false belief is actually a false belief.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, exactly. And I love that you said that because again, like I even talk about this in the book that I am fat one. I personally love to let people sit with that feeling for a second, because that's another thing we're quick to rush people through. Like if I was sitting at lunch with you and I said, oh, I'm so fat, I shouldn't have this extra cookie. Most of our girlfriends would say, oh, you're not fat. Like we would rush people through, not telling them not to feel that way, which is again why then we don't bring it up the next time, because we're like, oh, I know they're just gonna say, oh, you're not fat, look at me, I'm the one who's fat, and pull on their we go into this whole thing. Like we've all been in those conversations. And so yeah, exactly. First of all, any thought that disempowers you is not from God, right? So exactly like you said, does that thought lead you down the chain, the thought, the emotion, and then into the behavior of, well, I'm fat, so I guess now my behavior is I'm not going to go out and do anything because I don't have anything to wear that fit, goes down this whole toxic train of like doing things. And so that's a great way, just like you said, to know, okay, the behavior that it's producing is not life-giving. And we know anything that's not life-giving or disempowering, that's definitely not from the Lord. But then the other thing I like to look at to bring it back to the core beliefs is, so for example, if the thought is I am fat, then what does that mean about me? Right? Like, even if that's true, let's just say for a second, which we could all argue what fat even means, and I'm not going there right now. We're not necessarily arguing the definition of fat or BMI or obesity right now. That's for another conversation and a whole other rabbit trail. But let's just say, for example, medically speaking, it's a fact. Like I'm obese on the scales. They put me in that category, right? What does that mean about my identity though? Right? Like, what does that's where the core belief lies. What does that mean to be me about as a person?
Yeah.
Does that mean I now have no worth? Like, does that mean I'm disqualified? Because if that's what that means to me, then there's my core belief. So my core belief has something to do with I am only worthy of love, acceptance, doing, whatever the thing may be, if I am a certain weight, or if I am skinny, and whatever skinny means to me, right? And so that's where the core belief lies. The core belief isn't so much that I am fat. The core belief is, what does that mean to me, and where did that come from for me?
That's so important. And I think one of those like little nuanced details that, if you have the opportunity to sit with a counselor, that's amazing. But maybe you don't have the space for that. Get Rachel's book, because she guides you through how to identify those core beliefs. What you believe really matters. And I know personally, like I'm one of the 100%, that's how good I am at math. But even if I didn't know it was 100% of people, I know that that's something I've struggled with. I had such body image challenges as a teenager. It led to me having an eating disorder. And as we know, eating disorders are the most deadly of all mental health issues, and often one of the most misunderstood. And the longer we believe a lie, the more it starts to become truth, and the truth feels like a lie. And so I think doing this work really takes a huge leap of faith, because to say I am a person of worth and value, period, can feel very fake and phony. And so what would you say to the person who's maybe kind of feeling a bit wobbly and believing, no, my weight doesn't define me, my looks don't define me, whenever maybe that's the messages we've gotten as a kid, or that's the messages we see on social media, in consumer products. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'd like to ask them a bit of a solution focused question, and that what would your life look like without that struggle? Really, if we think about what would it look like for me not to spend every waking moment, it's very different every now and then having thoughts come in That's very different than I'm consumed by it all the time. And so if somebody is, like you said, kind of like, oh, I don't know, I would just say, just kind of picture, what would this look like to be free in this area? And if it frees up your time, frees up your thoughts, frees up your, ability to maybe go pursue something that you've wanted to pursue and you haven't, because you thought, well, man, once I lose this weight or once I get this piece of my life under control, then I can go do something. And that, whenever we instill hope, right? That
Yeah.
hope, man, it will help us to take those steps of faith, even when we're scared. It's totally normal to have a little fear around going down this journey. And I would just tell you I love 2 Timothy 1:7. It's one of my very favorite verses. For God has not given you a spirit of fear or timidity, but power, love, and a sound mind. And so lay hold of those gifts. Those are gifts, the power, love, and the sound mind, and self-discipline. Some translations call the sound mind. But if that's you, you're not alone. Like, I can relate to it on a personal level, just like you, Melissa. And I also can see it professionally in multiple areas that I've worked, and just to say, look fear in the face and show up, do the work. And like Melissa said, if you're not able to see a counselor, of course, I always recommend counseling, but if you can't do that, then at least I would do my book with a friend, maybe, who you could at least talk about things with. Then you could go to coffee together and have nice conversations about, okay, I read this chapter and this is what came up for me, and talk about what came up for each other, and have that safe space where the conversation, maybe for the first time in your life, isn't around what new diet you're trying together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even if you can go to counseling, I think having a friend or a family member have a makeover with them is so helpful, because you're right. So much of our language is about diets. It's about workouts, and there's nothing wrong with like eating whole foods and focusing on like, what recipe are you having, or what kind of workout are you doing? You're not saying that working out and eating well is bad, but if it's all meant to help us to be and look like a certain shape or size, it becomes very counterproductive. So as you were sharing, like, the counselor part of me was like, okay, I wonder how, Rachael, how do you feel like your life is different through going through this renovation process? Like, talk to us about maybe the before and the afters.
I was recently reflecting on this for even just myself, because it's fun whenever, after I wrote the book, I was looking back through the chapters and I realized body image for me, and I'm seeing for a lot of people, it's just one piece of image.
Yeah.
Meaning it's just one piece of insecurities in what are other people thinking of me, and being controlled by wanting to fit in, wanting a seat at the table, wanting all these things that are what's driving the bus, really, in our lives, if we're being honest with ourselves. And so I think about myself, and if I still was struggling silently and still had never said a word to anybody, and not gotten the help I needed, and then not gone through the hard work that I've needed, I can tell you pretty confidently, I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing today. I don't know, who knows if I would become a counselor or not. I can't determine that, but definitely speaking, writing, podcasting, even just, I have 2 daughters, right? And a son, like, leading them differently. I probably would be like, it kind of, I don't want to say scares me, but I'm grateful when I think about
It's
that.
humbling.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause you think about, man, this could be way different in my health. And exactly like what you mentioned, just, I had an eating disorder as well, and all those things. It's kind of scary. Like, I mean, it's humbling, and it makes me just extremely grateful that the Lord intervened, and that I got the help I needed, and I went on the journey, and I'm still on the journey. That's why I call it a journey, because I'm like, hey, new seasons, I'm still there too. Right. Yeah. And so I hope that encourages somebody, though, that if you're listening today, you tuned in for a reason, and it might be just the Lord saying, hey, I would love to help you in this area. And it's an invitation He's extending.
Yeah. And it's one that doesn't just end with us, but it impacts other people, because our words matter, and what we're saying about ourselves, it matters not just for us, but other people are listening. And I'm curious, in the book, you talk about doing a body image timeline. And also in your book, you talk about the research that you found that the majority of women heard some sort of negative message about their bodies or about other people's bodies. And so I'm curious, like, about that timeline and how to start it, and where we can find ourselves along that journey.
I love timelines. I think you can learn so much from them and see all kinds of themes, but I especially love doing them with body image. And I always just tell people, start with your earliest memory and add in between there to where you are now and things that come up. And I also love how, as believers, we can do this with the help of Jesus and the Holy Spirit and just say, okay, Lord, what do you want to add to my timeline? Right, sit down and do
Mm-hmm.
this with me and bring to mind memories of things that might even feel a little silly to us to add, right? Because we're like, oh,
Mm.
that was from
Not
the
that
third
big of a
grade.
deal, or
Yeah.
we
Uh-huh.
minimize our
Yep.
experiences.
Yeah. We minimize so much and we have so many memories that we've never shared with anybody because of that. And so, yeah, sitting down and just earliest memories you have until now and looking at those themes and seeing what God brings up. And then also looking at people who have influenced you, maybe in your family of origin or friends or whatever. And it's that awareness piece that we don't look back on these things to cast blame or do any of that. It's just to see who has shaped me, who's especially shaped those core beliefs about myself, and determining if they're healthy and we want to keep them, or if there might be some that it's time to process and reframe.
Yeah, and let go of. I know you're a mom, I'm a mom, and I don't know about you, but my daughter started struggling with her body image at age 6.
Yep.
And why is my tummy not like everyone else's tummy? And why is this compared to that? And it's been so challenging. I'm glad that I've done the work that I've done on myself, because I'm able to sit with her emotions and process it with her. But it's like really challenging. I don't know if your daughters are having the same experience, but people body shame her a lot for how she looks. And I mean, kids are getting all kinds of messages about their bodies. And I'm just curious, like, just to process that with you, like, what's that been like for you as a mom, and
Yeah.
what your daughters especially have gone through? Not that your son isn't also dealing with it.
Yeah. How old is your daughter,
She's
Melissa?
12 now.
12 now. Yeah. So this has actually been an interesting and a fun and a humbling process to watch because, yeah, just like you, especially I have two daughters. My older one has struggled more than my younger one, but my older one, same thing. When she was young, like 6 to I'd say 10 or so, it was a pretty big struggle of exactly what you're talking about, the tummy and the different things. And now she's 16 and she is so free. Like, and she's taller than me. She's not a small girl. Like she's almost as tall as her dad actually. And we've had these conversations before. I've talked to her. I said, do you remember when you were, we just talked about this, like when you were younger and she struggled or you've struggled in this area. And she said, yeah, she said, I don't know. And I really think, and I believe that her freedom now has come from the fact that, yes, it started young, but to your point, I also started young with her and processing it, right? When
Mm-hmm.
I would notice her say things, or like you said, people saying things, and instead of her taking that and never sharing that with anybody, her and I got to process it. And so did it mean she didn't struggle? No, she still struggled, but we got to walk through it together. And so that's been really fun to watch that, because I'm like, huh, I wonder if this, and again, I'm, it's one mother-daughter situation. So this isn't a long study or a big study, but I just know personally it's been fun to watch. Okay, she still struggled, but because I was willing to get in there and have those conversations with her, let her feel those feelings, be sad with her, be like, give her
Mm-hmm.
that space, then I feel like it's helped her learn how to process it on her own even better as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that must be really cool to see too. At
Mhm.
16, she's pretty much through adolescence, and that must be so encouraging to see her come the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's even fun because she has this big, really big curly hair, and it used to, she would want to try to tame it and try to straighten it. And now she just like, no, I'm never straightening it again. Like she just lets it
Oh,
go.
I
And
love
yeah,
that.
and it's really cute, but that's been fun to watch because doesn't mean she didn't struggle through it, but having a mom to walk alongside her. And I'm sure I messed up at times for sure, but I also got it right and just being there for her. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the idea of it too, like how we care for ourselves, because it can often feel selfish when we care for ourselves. But as we care for ourselves well, even if you're not a mom or a parent, like you're a sibling, you're a friend, you're a niece or a nephew, like there's people in your world. And it really does matter as we love ourselves well. We're able to love each other well. Can you talk about how we can like pass it on? It's not just about us. It is, but it doesn't end there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Everything we do has a trickle effect. And whether you're a parent or exactly, we all influence somebody. We all influence. You do not have to be a parent to be influencing somebody. And one thing that I love whenever when we look at what we're passing on is, yes, being mindful of our words, but also this another reason to be mindful of doing our deep work ourselves is that our behaviors really have more influence than our words. And don't get me wrong, words are very powerful. So yes, they're powerful too. I'm not diminishing words,
Right.
but then the next layer is behavior. So just because I'm not saying out loud, oh, I'm so fat or something, if I'm still internally wrestling with that, my behaviors are going to show that. And then the people around us are going to pick up on that. And so when we stand our ground and get free for ourselves, we are standing our ground for all the future generations.
This is so good. Do you feel like there's anything that we haven't hit that you're feeling like, ooh, this is something that somebody really needs to hear?
I mean, there's a lot we haven't hit, so I don't know.
I know.
Yeah,
What word of
pressing.
what word of encouragement would you have for somebody who's maybe on the fence as far as doing this work?
If you are on the fence of doing this work, I would encourage you just to lean in. There's no way around but through. I know we all want to walk around things, but there is goodness and beauty and freedom on the other side. Is it going to be easy? No, maybe not. But will it be worth it? Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. Where can we find the book and where can we find you?
Yeah. Well, the book is available pretty much wherever books are sold. If you want to learn more about the book, it's at imagerestoredbook.com. And then my website's my main hub, rachaelgilbert.com. And I like to hang out on Instagram at Rachael J. Gilbert. And then I have a show as well called Real Talk with Rachel. So all the places.
Yeah, definitely tune in. It's a wonderful podcast. You have amazing guests. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Thanks for having me.